All right, so before we can paint our weights, we need to make sure we bind the model to the skeleton. Okay, so to do that, what we would need to do is to grab all the body parts, right? And then we need to grab all the joints. Now, we could go like this. We could select the root joint, and then when we go to bind, switch this to rigging. You can go ahead and do this now. Don't do this next part though. We go skin, bind skin, hit the option box. We could do joint hierarchy, which means it'll select all the joints and it will bind them. Now, most of the time that actually works pretty well, but if you recall, we made it so that these end joints, which apparently I did not name those end, um, uh, all these end joints we named end, and we don't actually want these ones bound to it. I just want this joint bound, not the tips. So basically the end of each joint chain, I do not want bound to it. And I'm going to real quickly just rename all these end, and then I'll continue the video. Yours are probably also not named. So if you look, all of these have the last name JNT04. So what we can do is I'm just going to grab each of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we'll just do modify search and replace names. And we'll just search for JNT04 and replace with, JNT04. Like that, right? JNT04 and replace with AND04 like that and replace. And now you'll see they all have the end joint named on them. Okay. So did I put end on these? Okay, I did put end. Good. So everything else should hopefully have end. Good. Just have end. Okay. So we just want to put end, but basically the idea is we don't need the tip ones to be bound, right? So I could just manually, the other way to do it is select the joints you want. So you click on this one, hold shift, click, hold shift, click, hold shift, click. This is all very annoying, as you can probably tell. So what we're going to do instead is I'm going to take that out. You can type right in there, but I'm just going to click this in the hopes that it's bigger. We're going to select all of those joints using mel. So mel is my embedded language, and if you look, everything that I do shows up here. So see select and then clear, CL, it's a flag. So what I want to do is I want to select all those joints. So I'm just going to do select, okay, -R, which means replace. And then we want to tell what we want to replace it with. Now you can't just do J and T because there's nothing named J and T. Like it's that'll be that specifically. So what you want to do is this. Also, it's got to be underscore J and T because there might be something with a J and T in it. I mean, there aren't too many words I think that have that in order. What we want to do is we need to put a asterisk before and an asterisk afterwards. Does this get bigger? Is there any way to make this? Oh, here we go. Good. Just want to make it big so you can see it. So what the asterisk does means there can be any number of characters before and any number of characters afterwards. So it's going to select everything that has a J and T in it at some point on, and it can have stuff afterwards. It can have stuff afterwards or before. And then we just need to make sure we put a semicolon because it's a piece of code. All right. Now when I hit enter, we have to hit control enter. Forgot. When we're in here, you hit control enter. That will execute. You can also just type it right in here, just so you're aware. But what you're going to see is that will select all of those joints. But notice it did not select my end joint. So it's just a quicker way of basically selecting all the joints. If you remember in a previous class, I'm like, oh, let's make sure we name everything J and T. It's a nice little trick, and you can use that for any number of things. Okay. So once we have all those selected, I need to select all the geometry I want to bind it to. We are not binding the eyes. And we will not bind the hair because we can just parent those because they're not going to deform based on the bones. So I'm going to hold shift, select this piece, and I think I'm going to take his shirt off for this one. We'll put it on there too. We'll just bind it, but I can just turn it off. We'll select this. I'll select this, and we'll select this. And I think I have all the pieces of geometry minus that. Okay, so now I have the joints I want selected. I have the geometry I want selected. Now I'm going to go ahead and bind it. So you're just going to go skin, bind skin, hit the option box. So you're going to see a bunch of options here. Okay, no, that doesn't make it any bigger. More or less, when we see a list, like if there's options, the top thing is usually the oldest, and the bottom thing is the newest. Typically, you want to go to the bottom thing. So joint hierarchy means when I select one joint, it'll go down the hierarchy, and any joint that's parented to that joint, it might be that it is parented as well. I'm not sure, but it'll select that whole joint. Most of the time, to be honest, I just usually use that. Select a joint means only the joints I currently have selected. An object hierarchy So like if you want to do muscles and stuff, you could use an object hierarchy. So you actually have pieces of geometry inside that is bound to. Some rigs are entirely done that way. A lot of the ones we did at Fisher Price were actually done that way. In our case, we're just going to do selected joints because I have the joints I want specifically. Bind method. Closest distance sucks. Closest in hierarchy is slightly less sucky. Heat map's actually pretty good, but geodesic voxel is the best. Basically, it's going to voxelize the model, right? So voxel is like a pixel. Pixel is one picture element. Voxel is one volumetric element. Okay, so basically, it uses some sort of system in order to create it. That's the newest one. It works really well. The default settings are pretty nice. Okay. Basically, what this part does is it's what the default weights that it's going to give the joints. So even if it does a bad job, you can paint over them. We're going to paint over them anyhow, but just be aware that that's what it's for. If for some reason it gives you an error and it's like you can't do geodesic voxel, try to fix the error if you can. But if you cannot fix the error, then do heat map. If for some reason you get an error on heat map, then go closest hierarchy, so on and so forth. But just be aware if you have to use these top two, it's gonna suck. You're gonna have to do a lot of painting. But like I said, I remember when they came out with heat map, it was phenomenal. And then shortly afterwards, it came with geodesic voxel, and it's really good. You're not gonna think it's good, but to me, it's amazing. Skinning method, we'll just do classic linear. There's also dual quaternion and weighted blended. Weighted blended means it's a blend between these two. Classic linear just means that when the points are interpolated between two joints, that it'll be linearly between them. It'll be directly in the middle. Dual quaternion is this other algorithm, and what it does is it uses different mathematics to determine where the points go. And the reason why this one's nice is because it doesn't lose volume like classic linear does. You can actually end up with too much volume depending on. But I don't know that this is supported like in game engines, so just do classic linear. It's just cleaner. It's easier to work with. There's ways of working around it. So we're just going to do classic linear. Leave this on interactive, post blows. That's all you really need to know. There's reasons why, but don't worry about it. Weighted distribution, distance is fine. Allow multiple bind poses. I don't care. We're not doing anything with that. Max influences. That just means how many, if I have a vertice, let's say I have this elbow vertice, just this one right here, right? Just a single vertice. How many joints can it be weighted to? Like how many things can have an influence on that vertice, right? So if I have one in my elbow, I really only need two influences. I need the upper arm and the lower arm, right? I don't need like my knee to be affecting this, right? So you don't I shouldn't say almost all, most of the vertices, you really only need two influences, but that's not always the case. If you look at the shoulder area, right, it needs some influence of like the chest, the upper arm, and the clavicle. Okay, so there's some where they have multiple effects. Typically, you're not going to go above 3. So I either put 2 or 3 in here. We'll just put 3. Turn off maintain max influences. Basically, it forces it to have that many influences. You do not want that. Like if it can only do 2, like if 2 is all it's need, just let it be 2. I don't need more than what it is. Remove unused influences is fine. Colorize skeleton just means that when it draws the skeleton, you'll notice it's all one color. When it's bound, it'll be rainbow bright. I always turn that off because I think it's cheesy. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't affect anything. It's not even helpful. We'll leave it on just so you can see it. Include hidden selections on creation. I don't really care. Fall off is basically the fall off of when it does the calculations. I usually don't play around with that. Like everything else, the higher the resolution, the longer it's going to take. But technically, the more accurate it should be. So I'm just going to go ahead and let's just do 512. But if for some reason it takes forever, I don't find I have any issues with it. Validate voxel state. That just makes sure, like if you are having an issue with this, you can try turning that off and see if it works. But just make sure that everything is hunky-dory. And yeah, we're just going to do skin cluster. That's the type of node that it's going to create that does the deformation. It's a good idea that before you do any of this, you should already have this saved anyways. We haven't done anything. But if you had already worked on something, you'd want to save before you do this. Anytime the computer is going to do massive amounts of calculation, it's a really good idea to just save so that if it crashes, you don't lose whatever it was that you were currently working on. We'll hit apply and close. It should work pretty quickly. And you can see it gave me a runtime error. And what is it mad about? Invalid voxel resolution specified. Value needs to be more than a power of 2. Interesting. I've never had that before. So let's go back. Let's get over here. And can I hit Z? Sweet, everything back. Let's try turning this off. Apply and close. Oh, still didn't like it. All right, let's get rid of this. I don't know. Okay, I lowered the resolution and that seemed to work. Whatever. Okay, I also turned that off. Let's just double check that. Okay, so, oh, it only had the arm selected. Oops, let's undo that. Okay. Apply and close. Let's make sure it was only the arm. No, only the arm got rainbow bright. Why did nothing else get rainbow bright? All right, well, I don't really care if nothing else got rainbow bright, but yeah, okay. So what you can do is you can basically move these around, make sure that it was bound. You're going to see that most of it, actually, the default weights actually work pretty well. So you can see here's his knee. You can see this didn't get bound at all. Oh, doesn't even have, look, it doesn't even have the joints attached to it. Maybe I must have had this unselected. If for some reason you do that, it's not a big deal. If you think about it, this really only needs, it probably needs this joint too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this one, this one, this one, this one. Actually, we'll just do each one individually. This one, this one, this one, this one, then this one. And then I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to do skin. I'll just click bind skin. And then we'll grab this, this, and this, and this. And I'll hit G. This was the last thing I did. Oh, because they're both selected. No. Oops. Let's undo that. I forgot the joints were selected. Or that both of them were a thing. G. Okay. If you need to detach one, you can delete history. Or there is an option here, just so you can see. Unbind skin. And that will unbind it. So that's another thing you can do. I kept on doing, but I wasn't going back far enough. But these are actually good that I'm having these errors, because then I can show you how to solve them. So I'm not going to take them out. So skin, then we'll just do bind skin, because it'll just, whatever settings you have is always what it is by default. Okay, so now if we look at this, it should be good. Yeah, double check. Good. Okay. So I would just go through and just make sure everything moves. The eyes aren't going to move. That's fine. The jaw is going to look. I always like doing this because watch, it looks funny. Oh, it doesn't look funny. Usually it looks funny. You'll see the mouth kind of go into itself. So just make sure that everything seems bound, and it seems as though, seems as though it is. Okay, so we'll call that good. That's all we're going to do for this video. There's the binding. Relatively painless. In the next videos, we'll just kind of continue on. I'm just going to show you just, a variety of ways of binding, attaching the skin and making adjustments and such.